The gunshot echoed through the abandoned warehouse. I felt the bullet tear through my shoulder, hot and sharp. Blood spread across my blouse as I fell backward onto the concrete floor. Through the haze of pain, I looked up at my daughter-in-law, Vanessa, standing over me with the gun still pointed at my chest. Her eyes were cold, calculating. In that moment, I knew I had been naive about my own family. "You ruined everything," she hissed, taking a step closer. "You should never have followed me that day." My eyes darted to my phone, lying a few feet away, still recording. If I could just keep her talking until the police arrived. "Why?" I whispered, pressing my hand against my bleeding shoulder. "He was your husband. James is your son." Vanessa's laugh was hollow. "You still don't understand, do you? It was never about family." I never thought my daughter-in-law would shoot me, but looking into her eyes, I realized how blind I'd been about the woman my son had married. 6 months earlier, the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on my porch as I settled into my rocking chair, teacup in hand. It was that sticky kind of heat that makes your blouse cling to your back even when you're sitting still. I glanced at the old clock in the kitchen, 5:15 p.m., right on schedule for my afternoon ritual. The house felt too big, too quiet since I buried Marcus 6 months ago, but this daily cup of tea overlooking Meridian Lake brought me a sliver of peace. I'm Gabrielle Mason, 62 years old, a retired school teacher with arthritis in my knees and more memories than years ahead of me. This house, this weathered 2-story colonial with its creaking floorboards and faded blue shutters, had been my home for 40 years. It was where I raised Marcus after his father passed when our boy was only 10. Now it was just me, my memories, and the lake shimmering beyond the trees. I ran my fingers along the worn arm of the rocking chair, feeling the grooves Marcus had carved as a teenager. Mom plus Marcus, surrounded by a lopsided heart. Such a sweet boy he'd always been. And then a fine man, an engineer with a kind smile and his father's eyes. 6 months since the accident, and sometimes I still caught myself setting the table for 2. As I sipped my tea, I noticed something was off about the drawer in the hallway table. It was slightly ajar, though I was certain I'd closed it that morning. Setting down my cup, I walked over and pulled it open fully. My bank statements and Marcus's life insurance paperwork were there, but not in the neat stack I always kept them in. Someone had been through them. My heart quickened. I lived alone. The only other person with a key was Vanessa Williams Mason, my daughter-in-law. Even thinking about her made my stomach tighten. She was beautiful. I'll give her that, 34 years old, with the kind of elegance that makes other women feel shabby in comparison. Marcus had been smitten from the day they met at some corporate function 3 years ago. They married within 6 months too quickly for my liking, but my concerns fell on deaf ears. "She makes me happy, Mom," Marcus had said. "Isn't that what matters?" Of course it mattered, but something about Vanessa never sat right with me. The way her smile never quite reached her eyes. The way she checked her watch when Marcus told stories about his childhood. The way she looked at this house, my house, with a calculating gaze as if mentally renovating it room by room. I was organizing the papers back into place when something caught my eye through the window. A silver car speeding down the dirt road toward the lake, kicking up dust like a storm cloud. Vanessa's car. She was driving like a madwoman, much too fast for the unpaved road Marcus and I used to walk together when he was a boy. I returned to my porch, tea forgotten, and watched as she slammed on the brakes at the lake's edge. The tires skidded in the dirt. She jumped out of the car as if propelled by springs, wearing that gray dress Marcus had given her for their anniversary. Her hair was wild, her face flushed red. She looked like she'd been crying or screaming or both. Vanessa glanced around nervously, then popped the trunk and pulled out a brown leather suitcase. I recognized it immediately. I'd given it to her myself as a wedding gift. "So you can carry your dreams everywhere," I'd told her that day. How naive I'd been. The suitcase seemed heavy. She struggled with it, her body stooped, her arms trembling. Then she walked to the water's edge, every step a visible effort. "Vanessa!" I shouted, but she was too far away, or perhaps she chose not to hear me. She swung the suitcase once, twice, and on the third swing she threw it into the lake. The splash cut through the afternoon stillness. Birds took flight. Vanessa stood watching as the suitcase floated for a moment, then began to sink beneath the surface. Then she ran back to her car, started the engine, and disappeared down the road in another cloud of dust, leaving only silence behind. I stood frozen, trying to process what I'd just witnessed. Why would Vanessa throw a suitcase into the lake? What was inside that she needed to dispose of so desperately? A chill ran down my spine despite the heat. Something was terribly wrong. My legs started moving before my mind could catch up. I ran down the porch steps across the yard onto the dirt road. My arthritic knees screamed in protest. My chest burned. But I didn't stop. The lake was about 100 yards away, a distance that hadn't seemed so far when Marcus was alive. When I reached the shore, I was gasping for breath, my heart hammering against my ribs. The suitcase was still visible, half submerged, sinking slowly into the murky water. The leather was dark and heavy with water. I waded in without hesitation. The lake was cold, much colder than I expected. It rose to my knees, then my waist. The mud at the bottom sucked at my feet, nearly claiming a sandal. I stretched out my arms and grabbed one of the suitcase straps. It was incredibly heavy, as if filled with rocks or something worse. I didn't want to contemplate what could be worse. That's when I heard it. A sound, faint, muffled, coming from inside the suitcase. My blood ran cold. No, it couldn't be. Please, God, I whispered. Don't let it be what I'm thinking. I pulled harder, my arms shaking, water splashing my face. Finally, I dragged the suitcase toward the shore and onto the wet sand. I fell to my knees beside it, my hands fumbling with the zipper. It was stuck, wet and resistant. Come on, I muttered through clenched teeth as tears blurred my vision. I forced the zipper once, twice. It burst open. I lifted the lid, and what I saw inside made my entire world stop. There, wrapped in a soaked light blue blanket, was a baby. A newborn so small, so fragile, so still. His lips were purple. His skin was pale as wax. His eyes were closed. He wasn't moving. Oh my God. No. My hands trembled violently as I lifted him from the suitcase with a gentleness I didn't know I still possessed. He was cold, so cold. He weighed almost nothing. His little head fit in the palm of my hand. His umbilical cord was tied with a piece of string. Not a medical clamp, just plain string, as if someone had delivered this child at home in secret without help. I pressed my ear to his chest. Silence. Then I held my cheek near his nose, and I felt it, a puff of air so faint I thought I'd imagined it. But it was there. He was breathing. Barely, but breathing. I stood up, clutching the baby to my chest, and ran toward the house faster than I had moved in years. Water dripped from my clothes. My bare feet bled from stones on the path, but I felt no pain, only terror, only urgency, only the desperate need to save this tiny life trembling against me. I burst into the house, grabbed the kitchen phone, and dialed 911 with one hand while cradling the baby with the other. 911, what's your emergency? A female voice answered. A baby, I sobbed. I found a baby in the lake. He's not responding. He's cold. He's purple. Please send help. Ma'am, I need you to calm down. Tell me your address. I gave her my address, the words tumbling out incoherently. Put the baby on a flat surface, the operator instructed. I swept everything off the kitchen table with one arm. Plates, papers, nothing mattered. I laid the baby down, so small, so fragile, so still. Is he breathing? I think so. Very little. Barely. Listen carefully. Get a clean towel and dry the baby very gently. Then wrap him up to keep him warm. The ambulance is on the way. I did as she said, my movements clumsy and desperate. I dried his tiny body, wrapped him in clean towels, then picked him up again, cradling him against my chest. I started rocking him, an ancient instinct I thought I'd forgotten. Hang on, I whispered to him. Please hang on, they're coming to help you. The minutes until the ambulance arrived were the longest of my life. I sat on the kitchen floor with the baby against my chest, singing the same lullaby I used to sing to Marcus. I needed this child to know he wasn't alone, that someone was holding him, that someone wanted him to live. The sirens broke the silence. Red and white lights flashed through the windows. 2 paramedics rushed in, an older man with a gray beard and a young black woman with her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. She took the baby from my arms with an efficiency that broke my heart. She checked him quickly, listened with her stethoscope, her face professionally blank, but I saw her shoulders tense. "Severe hypothermia, possible water aspiration. We need to move now," she said to her partner. They placed him on a tiny gurney and put an oxygen mask over his face that nearly covered his entire head. Their hands worked fast, connecting monitors, inserting an IV. The male paramedic turned to me. "You're coming with us." It wasn't a question. In the ambulance, I sat on a small side seat, unable to stop staring at the baby so small among all that equipment. "How did you find him?" the female paramedic asked as she continued working. "In a suitcase. In the lake. I saw someone throw it in." She looked up sharply, then exchanged a glance with her partner. I saw something in her eyes, worry, suspicion, or perhaps pity. "Did you see who it was?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. Vanessa. My daughter-in-law. My son's widow. The woman who had cried at Marcus's funeral as if her world had ended. The same woman who had just tried to drown a baby. How could I say it? How could I believe it myself? "Yes," I finally said. "I saw who it was." We reached General Hospital in less than 15 minutes. The emergency room doors flew open. Medical staff surrounded the gurney, shouting numbers and orders. They rushed the baby through a set of double doors while a nurse stopped me from following. "Ma'am, you need to stay here. The doctors are working. We need information." She led me to a waiting room, cream-colored walls, plastic chairs, the smell of disinfectant. I sat down, shivering from head to toe, my clothes still wet, my mind racing. The nurse sat across from me. Her name tag said Eloise Johnson. She was older, maybe my age, with kind eyes and deep laugh lines that spoke of a life well lived. Her gray-streaked hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her dark skin glowed warm under the harsh hospital lights. "I'm going to need you to tell me everything that happened," she said in a voice both gentle and firm. And so I told her every detail from the moment I saw Vanessa's car until I opened the suitcase. Eloise took notes on a tablet, nodding occasionally, her face revealing nothing. When I finished, she sighed deeply. "The police will want to talk to you. This is attempted murder. Maybe worse. Attempted murder." The words hung in the air like black birds. My daughter-in-law, my son's wife. A murderer. I couldn't process it. Eloise put her hand on mine. "You did the right thing. You saved a life today." But it didn't feel like that. It felt like I had uncovered something terrible, something I couldn't push back into the darkness. 2 hours passed before a doctor came to speak with me. He was young, maybe 35, with dark circles under his eyes and hands that smelled of antibacterial soap. "The baby is stable for now," he said. "He's in the neonatal intensive care unit. He suffered severe hypothermia and aspirated water. His lungs are compromised. The next 48 hours will be critical." Is he going to live? My voice sounded broken even to my own ears. "I don't know," he said with brutal honesty. "We're doing everything we can." The police arrived half an hour later, 2 officers. Detective Fatima Johnson introduced herself with a firm handshake. She had dark, intelligent eyes that seemed to see right through lies. They asked me the same questions repeatedly from different angles. I described the car, the exact time, Vanessa's movements, the suitcase, everything. Detective Johnson stared at me with an intensity that made me feel guilty, though I'd done nothing wrong. "And you're sure it was your daughter-in-law, completely sure?" "Yes." "Why would she do something like this?" "I don't know." "When was the last time you spoke to her before today?" 3 weeks ago, on the anniversary of my son's death." Detective Johnson wrote something down. "We're going to need you to come to the station tomorrow to make a formal statement, and you cannot contact Vanessa under any circumstances. Do you understand?" I nodded. What would I say to her anyway? Why did you try to kill a baby? Why did you throw him in the lake like trash? Why? After the officers left, Eloise returned with a blanket and a cup of hot tea. "You should go home, get some rest, change your clothes." But I couldn't leave. I couldn't leave that baby alone in the hospital, that baby I had held against my chest who had breathed his first breaths of hope in my arms. I stayed in the waiting room. Eloise brought me dry clothes from the hospital storage nurse's scrubs that were too big. I changed in the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like I had aged 10 years in one afternoon. I didn't sleep that night. Every hour I asked about the baby, the answers were always the same. Stable, critical, fighting. At 3 a.m, Pastor Joseph arrived from my church. Someone must have called him. He sat beside me in silence for a long time, just being present proof that I wasn't completely alone in this nightmare. God tests us in many ways, he finally said. This doesn't feel like a test, I replied. It feels like a curse. He nodded and didn't try to convince me otherwise. I appreciated that more than any sermon. When the sun began to rise, I knew that nothing would ever be the same. I had crossed a line. I had seen something I couldn't unsee, and whatever came next, I would have to face it because that baby, that tiny being fighting for every breath in the next room, had become my responsibility. I hadn't chosen it, but I couldn't abandon him either. Not after pulling him from the water, not after feeling his heartbeat against mine. 2 days later, I was still at the hospital. I had gone home only to shower and change clothes, then returned immediately. The baby remained in critical condition, but the doctors seemed cautiously optimistic. He's a fighter, one nurse told me. I was dozing in the waiting room chair when Detective Johnson appeared with a woman I hadn't met and a man in a suit. Their expressions were serious, and my heart immediately raced with fear. "Mrs. Mason, we need to speak with you," Detective Johnson said. "Somewhere private." They led me to a small conference room. The man in the suit introduced himself as Dr. Alan Mendez, a specialist in forensic genetics. The woman was Alana Williams, a social worker. We sat around a table, and Detective Johnson opened a folder. "Mrs. Mason, we have some significant developments in the case. First, we've received the results of the baby's DNA test." I wasn't even aware they had done a DNA test. "What were you looking for?" Detective Johnson and Dr. Mendez exchanged glances. He nodded and she continued. "The baby is a boy born approximately 3 days ago according to medical tests." She paused, then looked directly into my eyes. "And Gabrielle, he's your grandson." The world stopped. The words didn't make sense. I heard them, but my brain refused to process them. "My grandson? That's impossible. Marcus died 6 months ago. He didn't leave any children." "The results are conclusive," Dr. Mendez said. "We ran the tests twice. The baby shares approximately 25% of his DNA with you. He is definitively your biological grandson's son of your son Marcus." I felt as if someone had hit me in the chest with a hammer. Marcus had a son he never knew, a son someone had tried to drown in a lake. But how Marcus died 6 months ago? Vanessa never said anything about being pregnant. "Exactly," Detective Johnson said, leaning forward. "According to our calculations, she became pregnant about a month before Marcus's death, which means she knew." The room was spinning. Vanessa knew she was pregnant when Marcus died. Why didn't she tell anyone? Why hide the pregnancy for 9 months? Why give birth in secret and then try to kill her own child? I don't understand. I said, tears blurring my vision. Why would she do something like that? He's her son. Marcus's son. "That's what we need to find out," Detective Johnson said. "But there's more. We've been investigating your son's accident, and there are inconsistencies." "What kind of inconsistencies?" "Marcus's car was examined after the accident. The official report attributed the crash to wet roads, but we asked for it to be examined again. They found evidence of tampering with the brakes. Someone sabotaged them." The word landed like a bomb. Sabotage. Murder. My son hadn't died in an accident. He had been murdered. "Vanessa," I whispered. It wasn't a question. "She is our primary suspect," Detective Johnson admitted. "But we need proof, and we need to find her. She's disappeared completely, hasn't used her phone or bank account since the incident at the lake." I stood up, needing to move, needing air. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. Normal life, normal people, while I was trapped in this nightmare. "My son," I whispered against the glass. "My baby. She killed him." No one answered. There was nothing to say. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Alana Williams. "There's something else you should know about the baby and his future." I turned around. Her eyes were kind but sad. "Given that the baby is your biological grandson, you have legal rights. You can petition for custody." Hope flared in my chest, but Alana raised a hand before I could speak. "It will be a lengthy process. There will be evaluations, home visits, psychological interviews, and in the meantime, the baby will remain in state care." "No." The word came out forcefully. "You're not taking him from me. He's all I have left of Marcus. He's my grandson, my blood." "I understand," Alana said, "but the system has protocols. After everything that's happened, we need to ensure the baby is safe. He'll be safer with me than with strangers." "Maybe. But that decision isn't mine to make. It's up to a judge and what's in the best interest of the child." Dr. Mendez spoke again. "There's another factor we must consider. The baby suffered severe trauma hypothermia near drowning. The next few weeks will be critical for his development. He'll need specialized care, constant medical follow-up." "I'll do whatever it takes," I said. "Anything." Detective Johnson stood up. "Mrs. Mason, I need you to understand something. You are not a suspect. We believe your story. But you also can't simply keep the baby because he's your grandson. There's a legal process. And meanwhile, our priority is finding Vanessa. We need your help." "How?" "Think. Did Vanessa ever mention a special place, any property friend or relative she might be hiding with?" I closed my eyes, trying to recall any conversation with Vanessa during the 3 years she was married to Marcus. They were few, superficial. She never spoke about her family or her past. It was as if she had appeared out of nowhere the day she met Marcus. Then a memory surfaced. "She has an aunt, up north near the Canadian border. Marcus mentioned her once. He said Vanessa grew up with her." Detective Johnson wrote it down quickly. "Name? I don't know. Marcus never said." "It's a start. We'll look into it." They all left except for Eloise, who had come in toward the end of the conversation. She stayed with me in that cold, empty conference room. "Do you want to see your grandson?" she asked. I nodded, unable to speak. She took me through security doors to the neonatal intensive care unit. She had me wash my hands, put on a sterile gown. Then she led me to an incubator in the corner. And there he was, my grandson, my Marcus's son. So small, so fragile, hooked up to tubes and wires, but alive, breathing, fighting. He had Marcus's dark hair, Marcus's nose, Marcus's long fingers. "Can I touch him?" I whispered. "Yes, just be gentle." I reached my hand through the opening in the incubator. I touched his tiny hand. It was so soft, so warm. His little fingers closed around my index finger, a reflex perhaps, but it felt like a promise. "Hello, little one," I whispered. "I'm your grandma, and I promise I'm going to protect you. No one is ever going to hurt you again. I swear it on your father's memory." Eloise put her hand on my shoulder. "He needs a name for the hospital records, at least until we find the mother or until a judge decides." Marcus had told me once during a Christmas dinner that if he ever had a son, he would name him James after my father. "James," I said. "His name is James." I stayed by the incubator all night, holding his tiny hand, singing songs I used to sing to Marcus, promising James a future I didn't know if I could give him. But I was promising it anyway because now I knew the truth. This baby wasn't a stranger I had found by chance. He was my blood, my family, all that was left of my murdered son, and I wasn't going to let anyone take him from me. Not the system, not Vanessa, not anyone. The following days were bureaucratic hell. I woke up every morning at 5, showered, dressed, drove to the hospital. I spent the day by James's incubator. In the afternoons, the visits came, lawyers, social workers, police officers, all with folders, all with questions, all deciding if I was good enough to raise my own grandson. Alana showed up on the 3rd day with a list of requirements. She read it in a monotone voice. "You'll need a criminal background check, a psychological evaluation, a medical exam, verification of income, inspection of your home, personal references from at least 3 non-family members, and you need to complete a 40-hour childcare course." 40 hours, as if I hadn't raised a son myself, as if I didn't know how to change a diaper or prepare a bottle. But I said nothing. I just nodded and took the papers. "How long will all this take?" I asked. "If you're lucky, 6 weeks, if not 3 months." 3 months. James would be in foster homes for 3 months while I jumped through bureaucratic hoops to prove I deserved to raise him. And what about him in the meantime, when he's discharged from the hospital? He will go to a certified temporary foster family. You can visit him twice a week under supervision. Twice a week. Under supervision. As if I were a threat. As if I wasn't the one who saved him from drowning. That night, I called Pastor Joseph. I needed references, people who would vouch for my character. He came to my house the next day and sat in my kitchen drinking the same tea I used to make for Marcus. "Of course I'll help you," he said. "You're one of the strongest women I know. That child is lucky to have you." But I didn't feel strong. I felt old, tired, scared. I was 62 years old. How would I chase a 2-year-old when I was 64? How would I help with homework when I was 70? How would I be there for his graduation if I made it to 80? "I'm too old for this," I said aloud for the first time. Pastor Joseph looked at me over his cup. Sarah was 90 when she gave birth to Isaac. Age is just a number when love is involved. I wanted to believe him. I really did. On the 4th day, Eloise taught me how to care for James, how to support his little head, change his tiny diapers, prepare formula to the exact temperature. My hands trembled at first. I had forgotten how fragile newborns were, how dependent, how terrifyingly delicate. "You're doing great," Eloise said every time I panicked. But it didn't feel great. It felt like walking on thin ice. On the 5th day, Detective Johnson returned with news. "We found Vanessa's aunt," she said. "She lives in a small town 100 miles from the Canadian border. We questioned her, but she hasn't seen Vanessa in 2 years. Says they had a fight because Vanessa borrowed $3,000 and never paid her back." Money. It always came back to money with Vanessa. Marcus earned a good salary as an engineer, $70,000 a year. He had savings and a $200,000 life insurance policy. Vanessa was the beneficiary. "Did she collect the insurance?" I asked. Detective Johnson nodded. 4 months ago, $200,000 was deposited into her account. 2 weeks later, she transferred it all to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. And $200,000, the value of my son's life, hidden in a tax haven while she was planning to kill her baby. Why? I said the question that tormented me every night. Why kill the baby? She could have given him up for adoption, left him at a hospital. Why try to drown him? Detective Johnson was quiet for a long moment. "We have a theory. We've been investigating Marcus's finances. 2 weeks before he died, he changed his will. He left everything to his future children, not to Vanessa, to his children." The air left my lungs. Marcus knew. Somehow he knew Vanessa was pregnant and he changed his will to protect his child. "She killed him for money," I whispered. "We believe so, and then she found out the money would go to the baby if he was born alive. So she decided to eliminate him too." The sheer evil left me speechless. She had killed my son. She had carried the pregnancy to term. She had given birth alone, and then she had tried to drown her own baby. All for money. 6 weeks after finding James in the lake, I was in the hospital nursery when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I usually didn't answer such calls, but something made me pick up. "Hello." Silence. Breathing. Then a voice I recognized immediately. Gabrielle. Vanessa. My blood ran cold at the sound of her voice. "Vanessa." I glanced around the hospital nursery instinctively, as if she might be watching me. James slept peacefully in his incubator, unaware that the woman who had tried to kill him was now reaching out from the shadows. "Where are you?" I managed to ask, my voice steadier than I felt. "It doesn't matter where I am." Her voice was calm, calculated. "What matters is that I have something you want, and you have something I want." "You have nothing I want. I have the truth about what really happened to Marcus, about why I did what I did. I already know the truth. I read Marcus's journal. I know you killed him for money." Her laugh was cold, humorless. "A monster? How dramatic. You don't know anything, Gabrielle. Marcus wasn't the saint you think he was." "Don't you dare." I hissed, clutching the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Don't you dare speak ill of my son." "Fine. Call the police. By the time they trace this call, I'll be gone. I use burner phones. I'm not stupid." My mind raced. I needed to keep her talking. I put the phone on speaker and fumbled for my cell phone, starting to record. "What do you want, Vanessa?" "I want my son." "Your son? You tried to drown him." "It was a mistake. A moment of insanity." Her voice softened, almost believable. "I had just given birth alone. I was scared, confused. But I'm better now. I want my baby back." "Never. I'd die first." "That can be arranged," she said with chilling calmness. "Listen carefully. I want James and the money from Marcus's will. The $200,000 from the insurance, plus everything Marcus left in trust for the baby. That's another $300,000. $500,000. Everything Marcus had worked for, everything he had saved for his child. And if I refuse, then I'll come for him anyway. I'm his biological mother. Legally, I have more rights than you. And when they finally catch me, I'll say you stole my baby, that you threatened me, that you made up the whole story about the lake to keep him." I felt sick, but I kept recording. "How do I know you won't kill us both and take everything anyway?" "You don't, but it's your only choice. Bring the baby and the money to the old warehouse by the lake. You know, the one where you and Marcus used to fish. Tomorrow at midnight. Alone. If I see any cops, I disappear and you'll never see me again. Eventually, I'll find a way to take James from you anyway." "Vanessa, wait." But the line was already dead. I stood trembling, staring at the phone. I had the recording evidence that Vanessa was alive, that she had threatened me. I called Detective Johnson immediately and sent her the audio. "Perfect," she said. "This is exactly what we needed. Now we're going to set a trap. You'll go to that meeting, but we'll be there hidden waiting. When she shows up, we'll get her." "What if something goes wrong? What if she sees me with police and runs again?" "She won't see us, I promise. We'll have snipers position teams in the shadows. She's not getting away this time. And James stays with Eloise in a safe place. You're not taking him. You'll pretend you brought him." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. One more day. I just had to survive one more day, and then Vanessa would finally face justice for Marcus, for James, for all the pain she had caused. That afternoon, Detective Johnson arrived at my house with 3 other officers, all in plain clothes, all armed. They transformed my living room into a command center, laptops, radios, maps of the area around the warehouse. "Let's go over the plan again," Detective Johnson said, spreading a map on my dining table. "The warehouse is here abandoned for 5 years. It has 3 entrances, main, side, and rear. We'll have teams covering all 3. She pointed to spots on the map with a red marker. "Snipers here and here on the roofs of adjacent buildings. They'll have a clear view of the interior through the broken windows. Assault teams here in the back, ready to move in the moment we have visual confirmation of Vanessa." "And what exactly do I do?" I asked, my voice calmer than I felt. "You go in, talk to her. Keep her talking. We need her to confess, to admit she killed Marcus, that she tried to kill James. You'll be wearing a wire. We'll record everything." One of the officers, a tall man in his 30s, pulled out a small device the size of a button. "This goes on your clothes right here." He pointed just below my collar. "It transmits everything in real time. It also has a panic button. If you press this 3 times in a row, we move in immediately, no matter what." He showed me how it worked. I practiced pressing it. 3 quick taps. My life would depend on remembering that. "What if she asks to see James? Tell her he's in the car, that you want to talk first, that you want to understand why she did what she did. Appeal to her ego. People like Vanessa love to talk about themselves, to explain how clever they were." We spent hours going over every detail, every possible scenario, what to do if Vanessa was armed, what to do if she wasn't alone, what to do if something went wrong. At 8, they made me eat a ham sandwich that tasted like cardboard. At 10, they attached the wire and tested the audio repeatedly, having me say phrases, count to 10, yell, whisper, ensuring everything worked perfectly. "Remember," Detective Johnson said, looking me straight in the eye, "You are not alone in there. I'll be listening to every word. The team will be yards away. At the slightest sign of real danger, we're coming in. I won't let anything happen to you." I wanted to believe her, but fear coiled in my stomach like a cold snake. While we waited for the operation to begin, my mind wandered to Marcus, my beautiful boy who had grown into such a good man. I remembered him at 5 proudly showing me a drawing of our house, at 12 winning the science fair with his model of a solar-powered car, at 18 in his graduation gown, his smile so bright it could light up the whole stadium. Then I thought of Vanessa, the first time Marcus brought her home, her designer clothes, her perfect makeup, her practiced smile. "She's the one, Mom," he had whispered to me in the kitchen. "I've never met anyone like her." I had tried to be happy for him. I had ignored the warning bells in my head. I had silenced the voice that asked why this sophisticated, glamorous woman was interested in my son, who, while successful, wasn't wealthy enough to maintain the lifestyle she seemed accustomed to. Now I knew. It had always been about money. And when Marcus discovered she was pregnant, when he changed his will to protect his unborn child, he had signed his own death warrant. At 11:15, we moved out. I drove my own car with Detective Johnson ducked down in the passenger seat so she couldn't be seen from outside. The other teams were already in position, she informed me over the radio. "Snipers in position, rear team ready, perimeter secured." We arrived at the warehouse at 11:40. It was exactly as I remembered, old, decrepit, with broken windows and graffiti-covered walls. Marcus and I used to come here when he was a boy. We would fish off the pier behind it. Simpler times, happier times. Detective Johnson got out of the car at a blind spot from any imaginary cameras Vanessa might have placed. She disappeared into the shadows. I was alone. I looked at the clock, 11:55. 5 minutes. I closed my eyes and thought of Marcus, his smile, the way he called me Mom, in that affectionate tone, what it would have been like to see him as a father. I thought of James, of his future, of all the things he deserved to have a life without fear, without threats, without shadows. Midnight. My phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. "Come in, alone now." I got out of the car. The night air was cold. I could see my breath. I walked toward the main door of the warehouse, each step sounding too loud in the silence. The door was ajar. I pushed it. It creaked. The sound echoed off the empty walls. Inside, it was dark, almost completely black. Only a little moonlight came through the broken windows, creating strange shadows. "Vanessa," I called out, my voice small and scared. "Close the door," a voice said from the shadows. Vanessa's voice. I closed the door. My eyes slowly adjusted to the darkness, and then I saw her standing in the center of the warehouse. She wore dark clothes, black jeans, a hooded sweatshirt. She looked different, thinner. Her hair was short, dyed blonde, but it was her. "You came?" she said, sounding almost surprised. "You said you wanted to talk." "I said I wanted my son and the money. Where are they? I want answers first. I want to know why. Why did you kill Marcus? Why did you try to kill James?" She laughed, that same cold sound I had heard on the phone. "Why do you think Gabrielle? For the money. It was always about the money. Marcus loved you. He gave you everything. Marcus was a romantic fool. He talked about love and family and the future. I wanted freedom. I wanted to travel, to live, not be tied to a house and a crying baby. Then why did you marry him? Because he was an engineer. He made good money. He had savings. He had life insurance. It was an investment. I was going to wait 5 years, divorce him, take half of everything. But then I got pregnant, and it ruined my plan." Her words burned like poison. "You told him you didn't want the baby." "Of course I didn't want it. But Marcus became impossible. He changed his will, everything for the baby, so I had to adapt. If Marcus died while I was pregnant, I'd collect the insurance, but the baby would inherit the rest. The solution was simple. Kill Marcus. Have the baby. Kill him too. Keep everything." She was confessing. Everything. Every word recorded, transmitted to the police listening outside. "You hired Carlos to sabotage the brakes. $2,000. A bargain considering I got $200,000 from the insurance. Best investment of my life. And the baby, your own son. He was an obstacle. Nothing more. I gave birth alone in a cabin I rented with cash. No one knew I was pregnant. I wore baggy clothes, avoided people. When he was born, I thought about just leaving him somewhere. But then I remembered the lake where you and Marcus used to go. It seemed poetic to end everything where your little family tradition began. I felt sick. I felt rage. I felt all the hatred in the world concentrated on the woman standing in front of me. But you failed. I saved him. Yes, that was annoying. But it doesn't matter because now I'm going to finish the job. Where is James Gabrielle? It wasn't a question. And then I saw the gun. She pulled it from her sweatshirt, small, black, pointing directly at my chest. Last chance. Where is my son? I pressed the panic button. Once, twice, 3 times. You are never going to touch him. Her finger moved to the trigger. Everything seemed to move in slow motion. I saw the flash. I heard the shot. I felt something hit my shoulder, hot burning. I fell backward. And then the warehouse exploded with motion. The doors burst open. Blinding lights, shouting voices. Police, drop the weapon on the ground now. I saw Vanessa turn, saw the guns pointed at her, saw that she was surrounded. For a second, I thought she was going to shoot again to make them kill her. But she lowered the gun, slowly let it drop to the floor. She raised her hands. 3 officers tackled her, pinned her face down, cuffed her. She was screaming. Curses, threats. But it didn't matter. She was under arrest. It was over. Detective Johnson ran to me, knelt beside me. Gabrielle, stay with me. I'm okay, I managed to say, though the pain in my shoulder was excruciating. You got her. Tell me you got her. We got her. It's over. The ambulance is on the way. I closed my eyes. It was enough. It was over. I woke up in the hospital again, but this time was different. This time, it wasn't desperation I felt, but relief. Peace. My shoulder ached where the bullet had torn through muscle but missed bone. Lucky, the doctor said. 2 inches to the left, and it would have been your heart. Eloise was sitting by my bed holding James. When I opened my eyes, she smiled. Look who's awake, she said, coming closer. Someone missed you very much. I took James with my good arm. I cradled him against my chest. He smelled of powder and innocence. He started making little noises, those small sounds babies make when they're happy. Hello, my love, I whispered. Grandma's okay. Everything is okay now. Detective Johnson arrived an hour later. She brought flowers and a tired smile. How are you feeling? Like I've been shot, I said, but alive. What happened with Vanessa? Arrested. Charged with first-degree murder for Marcus. Attempted murder for James. Attempted murder for you. Plus conspiracy, fraud, obstruction of justice. She's going away for life, no possibility of parole. The words were sweet as honey. Justice. Finally. The recording worked perfectly. She confessed to everything. Her lawyer tried to argue coercion, that you forced her to say those things, but we have the whole encounter on video. They saw her pull the gun. Fire. They'll have no mercy. 3 days later, I was released from the hospital with my arm in a sling and a prescription for painkillers that made me dizzy. Eloise drove me home, James secure in his car seat in the back. I can stay with you for a few days, she offered. Help with the baby while your shoulder heals. You don't have to do that. You've already done so much. I want to, she said simply. Besides, who else is going to teach you how to change a diaper one-handed? With Eloise's help, I settled into a routine with James. The pain in my shoulder was nothing compared to the joy of having him home. Every cry in the night, every diaper change, every feeding was a reminder that he was alive, that he was safe, that he was mine, at least for now. 2 weeks after the warehouse incident, Detective Johnson called with an update. We've been investigating Vanessa's background. Her real name is Veronica Taylor. She has a history of targeting wealthy men, creating relationships, then disappearing with their money. Marcus wasn't wealthy, I said. No, but he had good earning potential. He was her long game, and when she discovered he had changed his will to protect the baby, she panicked. Have you found out anything about her past? Where she came from? She grew up in the foster system after her mother was imprisoned for fraud. Seems like criminal behavior runs in the family. Her mother taught her how to manipulate men from a young age. I thought about Vanessa or Veronica as a child being taught that people were merely tools to be used. It didn't excuse what she had done, but it helped me understand the monster she had become. We also found evidence of previous identities, previous scams, Detective Johnson continued. She's been doing this for at least 10 years. Marcus wasn't her first victim, but he was the only one she killed. Because he was the only one who discovered the truth about her. Exactly. He threatened her freedom, her plan. So she eliminated him. The legal process moved slowly. Vanessa's trial was scheduled for 3 months away. Meanwhile, I had my own legal battle, the fight for custody of James. The day after I was released from the hospital, Alana Williams, the social worker, came to inspect my home. She checked everything the nursery I had set up in Marcus's old room, the safety locks I had installed on the cabinets, the smoke detectors, the baby monitor. "You've done a good job preparing," she admitted, "but there's still the matter of your age and the psychological evaluation. I raised a son already. I know how to care for a baby." "It's not about your ability, Mrs. Mason. It's about your longevity. James will need care for at least 18 years. You'll be 80 when he graduates from high school." Her words stung because they were true. I was old to be raising a child. But what was the alternative? Foster care adoption by strangers who would never tell him about his father, about where he came from. "Age is just a number," I said, repeating Pastor Joseph's words. "Love is what matters, and I love that boy more than anything in this world." Alana's expression softened. "I know you do, and I'll note that in my report. But the judge will make the final decision." The psychological evaluation was scheduled for the following week. I spent hours talking to a young woman with glasses who asked about my grief, my feelings toward Vanessa, my plans for raising James. I answered honestly, hoping my sincerity would count for something. Then came the 40-hour childcare course. I sat in a classroom with mothers young enough to be my daughters, listening to an instructor explain basic baby care, as if none of us had ever seen an infant before. "Babies need to eat every 2 to 3 hours," she said seriously. "Babies cry when they are hungry or wet." I nodded and took notes, swallowing my pride. I needed that certificate. So I pretended to learn things I had known for decades. Through it all, James thrived. He gained weight. His lungs, damaged by the water he had aspirated, grew stronger. The doctors called him a medical miracle. I called him my blessing, my second chance, my reason for living. Eloise stayed with me for 2 weeks, then continued to visit regularly. She had become more than a nurse or a friend. She was family now, the Aunt James would never have from his biological parents. "You're doing great," she told me one evening as we sat on the porch watching the sunset over the lake. James was asleep in his bassinet beside us. "I've seen a lot of new mothers in my time, and you're better than most of them." "I don't feel great," I admitted. "I feel terrified most of the time. What if I can't protect him? What if I'm too old? What if Vanessa somehow gets out and comes after him again?" Eloise took my hand. "That's called being a mother, honey. The fear never goes away no matter how old they get. You just learn to live with it." One evening, as I was rocking James to sleep, Detective Johnson called with disturbing news. "We've discovered something else about Vanessa. She didn't act alone in planning Marcus's murder. She had help." My breath caught. "What do you mean?" "We found a series of emails between Vanessa and a man named David Reeves. He's a financial advisor who specializes in offshore accounts. It seems they were romantically involved. He helped her plan how to get Marcus's money, how to make the murder look like an accident, how to hide the funds afterward. Where is he now? That's the problem. We can't find him. He closed his office 3 months ago, told his clients he was retiring. His house is empty. His phone is disconnected. He's in the wind." "Do you think he helped her with James too, with the attempt to kill him?" "We don't know yet, but we're looking into it. I wanted you to be aware. Be extra vigilant. Keep your security system armed. Don't open the door to strangers." After I hung up, I looked down at James sleeping peacefully in my arms. The thought that there might be another threat out there, another person who wanted to harm him, made my blood run cold. I checked all the doors and windows twice that night. I slept with James's bassinet right beside my bed, my hand resting on its edge. The gun that Detective Johnson had helped me legally acquire lay in the bedside drawer loaded. Never again would I be caught unprepared. Never again would anyone threaten my family. The days turned into weeks. James grew. He started following objects with his eyes, smiling when I talked to him, grabbing my finger with his tiny hand. Each milestone was a miracle, each day a gift. I talked to him about Marcus constantly. I showed him pictures. I told him stories. Your daddy was a good man, I would tell him. Brave. He loved you even before he met you. He gave his life protecting you. James would coo and smile as if he understood, as if he knew he was loved, that he belonged, that he was wanted. 45 days after the warehouse confrontation, I received a call from Alana Williams. The judge has reviewed your case, Mrs. Mason. He's ready to make a preliminary decision about James's custody. We need you to come to the courthouse tomorrow at 9. My heart raced. This was it, the moment I had been preparing for the decision that would determine whether James stayed with me or went into the foster care system until the final custody hearing. I'll be there, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. That night, I barely slept. I laid out my best dress, a navy blue A-line I had worn to Marcus's college graduation. I polished my sensible, low-heeled pumps. I rehearsed what I would say to the judge if given the opportunity to speak. Morning came too quickly. Eloise arrived at 7 to help me get ready and to watch James while I was at court. You look beautiful, she said, adjusting my collar to hide the scar from the bullet wound. Strong, dignified, just what a judge wants to see. I'm terrified, I admitted. I know, but you've faced worse than a Judge Gabrielle. You pulled a baby from a lake. You confronted a murderer. You took a bullet. This is just a conversation. I hugged her, careful not to wake James, who was sleeping against her shoulder. What would I do without you? Lucky for you, you'll never have to find out. The courthouse was imposing, all marble and wood, and echoing hallways. Alana met me outside the judge's chambers. She looked unusually somber. What's wrong? I asked immediately. There's been a development. Someone else has filed for custody of James. My heart stopped. Who? A couple named Robert and Lisa Taylor. They claim to be Vanessa's distant cousins. They've submitted documentation showing their relationship. They're inside with their lawyer now. This is impossible. Vanessa never mentioned any family except the aunt, and even she hadn't seen Vanessa in years. Alana looked troubled. I know, it's unusual, but the judge has to consider all petitions. We entered the judge's chambers. It was smaller than I expected, a room with a large desk, bookshelves, and a small conference table where 4 people were already seated. An older man who must be the judge, a younger man in an expensive suit who was clearly a lawyer, and a couple in their 30s, the woman blonde and polished, the man dark-haired and confident. The Taylors. They looked up when I entered, their expressions unreadable. The judge stood. Mrs. Mason, thank you for coming. I'm Judge Michael Reynolds. I understand you've just been informed about the Taylors' petition. I apologize for the short notice, but they only filed yesterday afternoon. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Please sit down, the judge said, gesturing to an empty chair. We're here to make a preliminary determination about the temporary custody of James Mason pending the final hearing. As you know, Mrs. Mason, you have submitted a petition for custody as the paternal grandmother. Mr. and Mrs. Taylor have now submitted a petition as maternal relatives. The lawyer for the Taylors spoke up. Your Honor, my clients are the closest living relatives of the child's mother. They are younger, financially stable, and able to provide a 2-parent home for James. They own a 4-bedroom house in a good school district. They have no criminal history. They are the obvious choice for custody. I felt my heart sinking. He was right. They were younger. They were a couple. They probably had more money than my teacher's pension provided. Mrs. Mason, the judge said, turning to me, would you like to respond? I took a deep breath. Your Honor, I don't doubt that the Taylors are good people, but there's something that doesn't make sense. Vanessa never mentioned any family to my son or to me except for an aunt she hadn't spoken to in years. Now suddenly, after Vanessa is arrested for murder, cousins appear wanting custody of James. The Taylors shifted uncomfortably. We weren't close to Veronica, Robert Taylor said, but when we heard about what happened on the news, we felt we had a responsibility to step forward for the sake of the child. With all due respect, I continued looking directly at the judge. I found James in a suitcase in a lake. I pulled him out. I saved his life. I have spent every day since then by his side. I am his grandmother. I am the only family he has who has proven they will do anything to protect him. Judge Reynolds studied me for a long moment. Your dedication is commendable, Mrs. Mason, but the court must consider what is in the best interest of the child long term. The Taylors are younger. They are a couple. These are significant factors. Age is just a number. Your Honor, love is what matters, and I love that boy with every fiber of my being. The judge nodded. I will take all of this under consideration. I'll review the reports from social services, the psychological evaluations, the home inspections. I'll make my decision by the end of the day. As we left the chamber, Robert Taylor approached me. Mrs. Mason, we understand this is difficult, but we truly want what's best for James. I looked at him closely. There was something in his eyes I couldn't quite read, a calculation perhaps, or a secret. Do you even know what he looks like? I asked. Have you ever held him? Do you know how he likes to be rocked to sleep, or which lullaby makes him smile? Robert seemed taken aback by my directness. Well, no, but then you don't know what's best for him. You don't know him at all. I turned and walked away, my head held high despite the fear churning in my stomach. This wasn't over. I would fight for James with everything I had. Back at home, I paced the floor while Eloise tried to calm me down. There's something wrong about those people, I said. They show up out of nowhere claiming to be family. It doesn't make sense. Did you tell Detective Johnson about them? I stopped pacing. No, I should call her right now. I dialed her number and she answered on the second ring. Johnson here. It's Gabrielle Mason. Something strange has happened. A couple named Robert and Lisa Taylor showed up in court today claiming to be Vanessa's cousins. They want custody of James. There was a long silence on the other end. Robert and Lisa Taylor, you said, yes, do you know them? No, but the name Taylor, that's Vanessa's real last name. Did they show documentation proving their relationship? Apparently. The judge seemed to accept it. This could be legitimate, Detective Johnson said slowly, or it could be something else. Let me look into it. In the meantime, don't leave James alone with anyone you don't trust completely. I won't. After I hung up, Eloise and I sat on the porch watching the lake while James napped in his bassinet. The same lake that had almost been his grave was now a peaceful backdrop to his new life. What if the judge gives him to the Taylors? I whispered. What if they're not who they claim to be? Eloise took my hand. We'll cross that bridge if we come to it. For now, have faith. My phone rang at 4:30. It was Alana Williams. The judge has made his decision, Mrs. Mason. He wants to see you at the courthouse at 5:30. I felt a chill run through me. This was it, the moment of truth. I'll be there. The ride to the courthouse felt endless. Each traffic light, each turn seemed to take hours. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. In my mind, I rehearsed arguments, pleas, anything that might convince the judge to let me keep James. I couldn't lose him, not after everything we'd been through. I arrived at the courthouse with 10 minutes to spare. Alana Williams was waiting for me at the entrance, her expression unreadable. Are the Taylors here? I asked immediately. She nodded. They're already inside with their lawyer. Do you know anything? Has the judge given any indication? No, he's been very careful not to show which way he's leaning. We walked through the marble hallways in silence. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure Alana could hear it. When we reached the judge's chambers, I paused, took a deep breath, and straightened my shoulders. Whatever happened, I would face it with dignity. Inside, Judge Reynolds sat behind his desk, his expression solemn. The Taylors were seated to the right, looking confident. Their lawyer leaned toward them, whispering something that made Robert Taylor nod slightly. Mrs. Mason, thank you for coming promptly, Judge Reynolds said. Please have a seat. I sat down, folding my hands in my lap to keep them from trembling. I've reviewed all the documentation in this case thoroughly, the judge began. The home inspections, psychological evaluations, background checks, and personal references. I've also considered the unusual circumstances surrounding this child's birth and discovery. He looked at each of us in turn. This is not a typical custody case. James Mason came into this world under traumatic circumstances. His father was murdered before his birth. His mother attempted to kill him and is now facing multiple felony charges. As such, the court must be extraordinarily careful about placing him in a safe, stable environment. The judge picked up a folder. Mr. and Mrs. Taylor, your petition presents you as maternal relatives with the financial resources and youth to provide long-term care for James. On paper, you appear to be ideal candidates. The Taylors exchanged small smiles. My stomach clenched. However, Judge Reynolds continued, there are aspects of your petition that concern me, primarily the timing of your appearance and the lack of prior contact with the child's mother. Furthermore, this afternoon I received some disturbing information from the police department. The Taylors' smiles vanished. Their lawyer sat up straighter. Detective Fatima Johnson has informed me that there is an ongoing investigation into potential associates of Veronica Taylor, also known as Vanessa Mason. Specifically, they are looking for a man named David Reeves, who may have been involved in planning Marcus Mason's murder. Robert Taylor's face had gone pale. Lisa clutched his arm. Mrs. Mason? The judge turned to me. Detective Johnson also expressed concerns about the sudden appearance of previously unknown relatives and asked that the court proceed with extreme caution. Hope flickered in my chest like a fragile flame. In light of these concerns and after careful consideration of all factors, I am granting temporary custody of James Mason to his paternal grandmother, Gabrielle Mason, for a period of 6 months. The air rushed from my lungs. Tears sprang to my eyes. James would stay with me. During this period, the judge continued, there will be monthly visits from social services to ensure the child's well-being. At the end of 6 months, we will review whether custody should become permanent. Judge Reynolds turned to the Taylors. Your petition is not denied, but postponed pending further investigation into your relationship with Veronica Taylor. If you wish to pursue custody after the 6-month period, you may file a new petition at that time. Robert Taylor stood abruptly. This is outrageous. We're family. We have rights. Sit down, Mr. Taylor, the judge said firmly. This is not a rejection of your petition. It is a cautious approach given the extraordinary circumstances. The welfare of the child must come first. As Robert Taylor reluctantly sat down, his wife whispered something in his ear. Her face was tight with anger. The court's decision is final for now, Judge Reynolds concluded. Mrs. Mason, you will receive the official paperwork tomorrow. Until then, James remains in your care. Thank you, Your Honor, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I promise I will do everything in my power to keep him safe and give him the love he deserves. Outside the courthouse, Alana touched my arm. Congratulations, Gabrielle. I know how much this means to you. Thank you for all your help. I didn't do anything. You did this. You proved yourself every step of the way. As Alana walked toward her car, I heard rapid footsteps behind me. I turned to find Lisa Taylor approaching, her face flushed with anger. This isn't over, she hissed. That baby belongs with real family, not some old woman who'll be dead before he graduates high school. I stood my ground, looking directly into her eyes. You're not his family. Family doesn't abandon a child in a lake to die. Family doesn't appear out of nowhere after the hard part is over. I pulled him from that water. I held him when he took his first real breath. Where were you then? Her eyes widened slightly, and for a moment I saw something like uncertainty flicker across her face. Stay away from us, I said quietly. James has been through enough trauma. He doesn't need more. I turned and walked away, my head held high. In my car, I finally allowed the tears to come. Tears of relief, of joy, of exhaustion. James would stay with me. For now, that was enough. When I arrived home, Eloise was waiting anxiously on the porch, James asleep in her arms. What happened? She asked as I approached. He's staying with me, I said, unable to keep the smile from my face. For 6 months at least. Then we review for permanent custody. Eloise's face broke into a wide grin. Oh, thank the Lord, I've been praying all afternoon. She handed James to me, and I held him close, breathing in his sweet baby scent. "Hello, my darling," I whispered. "You're staying home where you belong." That night, after James was asleep in his crib, I called Detective Johnson. "Thank you for speaking with the judge. I don't know what you told him, but it made a difference." I only told him the truth, that we're investigating possible accomplices of Vanessa's and that the sudden appearance of relatives was suspicious. "Did anything about the Taylors seem off to you?" "Everything. The timing their story, the way they looked at James like he was a prize to be won rather than a child to be loved. My instincts say the same. We're looking into them more deeply. In the meantime, keep that security system armed and your eyes open." "I will." "What's happening with Vanessa's case?" "Moving forward, the trial is set for next month. With her confession on tape and the evidence we've gathered, it should be straightforward. She's facing life without parole." After we hung up, I sat in the nursery watching James sleep. His tiny chest rose and fell with each breath, his little fists occasionally twitching as he dreamed baby dreams. "You're safe now," I promised him softly. "I'll be here for you always." The next month passed in a blur of baby routines, legal meetings, and healing, both physical and emotional. My shoulder still ached when it rained a permanent reminder of the night in the warehouse. But each day with James brought new joy, new discoveries. His first real smile, the way he tracked my movements with his eyes, the tiny coos and gurgles that were his way of communicating. Eloise continued to visit regularly, becoming like family to both of us. Pastor Joseph came by every Sunday after church, blessing the house and praying for our protection. My neighbors, who had read about the case in the local papers, brought casseroles and offers of help. I hadn't realized how isolated I'd become after Marcus's death until this community of support emerged around James and me. A week before Vanessa's trial was set to begin, Detective Johnson called with startling news. We found David Reeves, dead, in a hotel room in Mexico. Apparent suicide, though we're investigating. He left a note confessing his role in planning Marcus's murder and helping Vanessa hide the money offshore. My God, there's more. We searched his laptop. He had emails with Robert Taylor going back months. It seems Taylor isn't Vanessa's cousin after all. He's another associate, possibly romantically involved with her. My blood ran cold. So my suspicions were right. They were trying to get James for Vanessa. It looks that way. We're obtaining arrest warrants for the Taylors now. They're facing charges of conspiracy, attempted kidnapping, and fraud for the false documents they submitted to the court. I thought of how close James had come to being placed with these people, these criminals who were working with the woman who had tried to kill him. "Are they in custody yet?" I asked, glancing at the windows, the doors suddenly feeling exposed. "Not yet. We're tracking them down. I'm sending a patrol car to your house now. Until we have them in custody, I want an officer outside your door." I hung up and immediately checked all the locks, drew all the curtains. James was napping in his crib, blissfully unaware of the danger still lurking. I sat in the rocking chair next to him, my hand on my phone ready to call for help at the slightest sound. The police car arrived 15 minutes later, a young officer named Rodriguez, who assured me he would remain outside until relieved by the next shift. "No one's getting past me, ma'am," he said confidently. That night was one of the longest of my life. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside made me start. I barely slept, checking on James constantly, irrationally afraid that somehow someone would take him from me. Morning came with more news. The Taylors had been arrested trying to cross the border into Canada. They were in custody facing multiple charges. The danger had passed, at least for now. "It's over," Detective Johnson assured me when she called. "They won't be getting out on bail, not with the evidence we have." I should have felt relieved, but instead, I felt exhausted. How many more threats would emerge? How many more people might try to harm James or take him from me? It seemed the ripples from Vanessa's actions would never truly end. Vanessa's trial began the following week. I attended each day, leaving James with Eloise. I needed to see justice done, to witness Vanessa face consequences for what she had done to Marcus, to James, to all of us. The evidence was overwhelming. The recorded confession from the warehouse, Carlos Mendez testifying about tampering with Marcus's brakes on Vanessa's orders, bank records showing the money transfers, the medical examiner's testimony about James's condition when he was found. On the second day of the trial, something unexpected happened. A woman entered the courtroom just as proceedings were about to begin. She was tall with short dark hair and Vanessa's high cheekbones, but where Vanessa's eyes were cold and calculating, hers seemed weary, burdened. "Who is that?" I whispered to the prosecutor. "Rebecca Taylor," he replied. "Vanessa's older sister. She contacted us yesterday, said she had important information." I watched as Rebecca took the stand later that day. She spoke clearly, her voice steady, despite the occasional tremor. "Ms. Taylor, what can you tell us about your relationship with the defendant?" the prosecutor asked. "Veronica. That's what I know her as, is my younger sister by 5 years. We grew up together in the foster system after our mother went to prison for fraud. I haven't seen her in nearly 4 years. And why are you here today?" Rebecca took a deep breath. "Because this isn't the first time my sister has abandoned a child." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Vanessa's face drained of color. "Please explain," the prosecutor prompted. 7 years ago, Veronica was involved with a businessman in Florida. She became pregnant. After the baby was born, a boy, she left him with me one night saying she'd be back in a few hours. She disappeared for 3 months. When she finally contacted me, she said she was starting a new life and didn't want the baggage of a child. What happened to the child? I raised him until his father was located. He has custody now. The boy is doing well. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. When I saw the news about what happened to this baby to James, I knew I had to come forward. This pattern with Veronica, it's who she is. She sees people as tools, as obstacles, never as human beings to love. As Rebecca spoke, I felt a strange mix of emotions, grief for what James might have experienced if Vanessa had succeeded, anger at the system that had failed to recognize the pattern, relief that Rebecca had found the courage to speak. Vanessa's lawyer tried to discredit Rebecca during cross-examination, suggesting she was motivated by jealousy or revenge. But Rebecca remained composed, her testimony unshaken. "I'm not here to hurt my sister," she said finally. "I'm here because no child should suffer because of her actions. Not again." When Rebecca finished testifying, our eyes met briefly as she left the witness stand. There was recognition there, a shared understanding of what it means to protect a child at all costs. The prosecution's cross-examination of Vanessa was brutal and effective. They played the recording from the warehouse, forcing her to listen to her own cold voice saying James was an obstacle and the best investment of her life was paying to have Marcus killed. "Were you suffering from postpartum psychosis when you hired Carlos Mendez to sabotage your husband's brakes 6 months before giving birth?" the prosecutor asked, destroying her insanity defense. Vanessa had no answer for that. "Were you suffering from postpartum psychosis when you transferred the insurance money to offshore accounts 4 months before giving birth?" Again, silence. "Were you suffering from postpartum psychosis when you called Mrs. Mason and demanded money and the baby, threatening to kill her if she didn't comply?" Vanessa's composure cracked, her face contorted with rage. "You don't understand. None of you understand. I never wanted to be a mother. I never wanted that life. Marcus trapped me with that pregnancy. He changed his will to control me even after death." Her outburst silenced the courtroom. Gone was the meek, suffering young mother. In her place was the real Vanessa, angry, entitled, cold. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before returning with their verdict, guilty on all counts. Vanessa was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of Marcus, plus additional consecutive sentences for the attempted murder of James and myself. As they led her away, Vanessa looked at me one last time. There was no remorse in her eyes, only hatred. I met her gaze steadily, refusing to look away. She had taken my son, tried to take my grandson, tried to take my life. But in the end, she had lost everything while I still had James. Outside the courthouse, I found Rebecca waiting. "I wanted to thank you," she said quietly, "for saving him, for fighting for him." "You didn't have to come forward," I replied. "That couldn't have been easy." She shook her head. "I've been carrying this guilt for years, wondering if I should have reported Veronica after what happened with her first child. Maybe if I had, your son would still be alive. You can't blame yourself for what she did." "Maybe not, but I can try to make it right now." She hesitated. "Would it be possible for me to meet him someday, James, I mean? He's my nephew after all. I don't want custody or anything like that. I'd like to know him." I studied her face, so like Vanessa's, yet so different. Where Vanessa's features were hard with selfishness, Rebecca's were softened by compassion. I saw no deception there, only hope and a touch of fear. "Yes," I said finally. "When things settle down, he should know he has family who cared enough to stand up for him." She smiled, relief evident in her eyes. "Thank you, Mrs. Mason." As she walked away, I realized that James's story was more complex than I had imagined. He wasn't just Marcus's son or Vanessa's unwanted burden. He was part of a larger tapestry, one that included people who might still bring goodness into his life. When I returned home, Eloise was waiting with James, who had just woken from a nap. His face lit up with a gummy smile when he saw me. At 3 months old, he was already so aware, so responsive. I took him in my arms, holding him close. "It's over, sweet boy," I whispered. "The bad people can't hurt us anymore. And someday you'll meet your Aunt Rebecca. She's nothing like your mother. She's brave like your father." Eloise touched my shoulder. "How are you feeling?" "Relieved, sad, angry, grateful, everything at once. That's normal. You've been through hell and back, but you made it. Both of you made it." 6 months later, we returned to court for the final custody hearing. James was now 9 months old, sitting up, babbling his personality, emerging more each day. He had Marcus's curious nature, his thoughtful gaze, his determined spirit. Judge Reynolds reviewed the reports from social services, noting that every monthly visit had found James thriving in my care. He examined the documentation of Vanessa's conviction and the Taylors' arrests. He considered statements from Eloise, Pastor Joseph, and my neighbors attesting to my dedication as James's caregiver. "Mrs. Mason," he said finally, "when I granted you temporary custody 6 months ago, I had some concerns about your age and the long-term implications for James. However, the reports I've received have been exemplary. You have demonstrated remarkable resilience, dedication, and love." He smiled at James, who was contentedly playing with a set of plastic keys in my lap. "Furthermore, it's clear that James is flourishing in your care. The bond between you is evident. I do have one question, however. Have you considered what will happen as James grows older and your own needs change? This is not meant to question your capabilities, but rather to ensure that James has stability in the years to come." I nodded, having anticipated this question. "Yes, Your Honor. I've established a trust fund for James with the money recovered from Vanessa's offshore accounts. I've also created a detailed care plan with my attorney, naming Eloise Johnson and Pastor Joseph as secondary guardians should anything happen to me before James reaches adulthood. Additionally, I've reconnected with Rebecca Taylor, Vanessa's sister, who has expressed interest in being part of James's life in a healthy, supportive way. She has already begun visiting monthly." The judge nodded, seemingly satisfied. "That shows foresight and wisdom, Mrs. Mason. Given all of this, I am granting you permanent custody of James Mason, effective immediately. Furthermore, since his biological mother is incarcerated for life and has lost all parental rights, I am authorizing adoption proceedings if you wish to pursue them." Adoption. To make James legally mine, not just his custodial grandmother, but his legal mother. I hadn't even allowed myself to hope for this possibility. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Yes, I want to adopt him." "Then so it shall be. Congratulations officially." The gavel fell, and suddenly all the weight I had been carrying for months lifted. It was official. James was mine. No one could ever take him from me. Outside the courthouse, Eloise, Pastor Joseph, and Rebecca were waiting. When I told them the news, they enveloped James and me in a group hug right there on the courthouse steps. We cried with happiness, drawing curious glances from passers-by. "We need to celebrate," Eloise declared. "Dinner at my place tonight. I'm making my famous fried chicken." That evening, as we gathered around Eloise's dining table, I looked at the faces surrounding me: Eloise, Pastor Joseph, Rebecca, and Detective Johnson, who had stopped by with flowers and stayed for dinner. These people who had become our family through the darkest period of our lives. And James, secure in his high chair, banging happily on the tray, oblivious to the extraordinary journey that had brought him here. One day I would have to tell him everything about his father's bravery, his mother's crimes, how he came to be with me. But not today. Today was for celebration, for gratitude, for joy. To James, Pastor Joseph said, raising his glass of sweet tea, to his bright future. To Marcus, I added, who is watching over us from somewhere proud of his son. To love, Eloise concluded, which always conquers evil. We drank, we ate, we laughed. James squealed with delight, not understanding but feeling the happiness around him. The months turned into years. James grew. He took his first steps at 11 months, toddling precariously across the living room floor, while I hovered nearby, my heart in my throat. His first word was Nana, for Grandma. I cried when he said it. At 2, he was running all over the house, curious about everything, his energy seemingly boundless. Rebecca visited regularly, bringing books and toys, becoming the aunt who could get down on the floor and play with him in ways my aging knees wouldn't allow. At 3, he started preschool, where his teacher described him as thoughtful and kind, just like his grandmother. I'd occasionally catch glimpses of Marcus in the way he'd furrow his brow when concentrating, or in his infectious laugh. I showed him pictures of Marcus, telling him stories about his father's kindness, his creativity, his courage. I wanted James to know where he came from, to understand the legacy of love that had brought him to me. As for Vanessa, I kept the truth simple until he was old enough to understand more. "Your mother couldn't take care of you," I told him when he first asked. "She was very sick in her mind and heart." On James's 5th birthday, we had a party in the backyard. We invited all the neighborhood kids' children from his kindergarten class. There were balloons, a cake shaped like a dinosaur presents piled high on a table. James ran among his friends, laughing, so full of life, so different from the purple still baby I had pulled from the lake 5 years ago. Eloise sat beside me on the porch, watching the celebration. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "That day," I admitted. "How I could have been 5 minutes later. How I might not have looked out the window at that exact moment. How everything could have been different. But it wasn't. You found him. You saved him. It was meant to be. Or Marcus guided my eyes to the lake that day," I said softly. "Sometimes I think he knew I would be there, that he trusted me to protect his son." "Maybe," Eloise said. "Or maybe you're just an incredibly brave woman who refused to give up." That night, after everyone had gone home, after James fell asleep exhausted from all the excitement, I sat in the rocking chair by his bed, looking at his peaceful face. Then I went to my study and opened the letter I'd been writing him since his first birthday, a letter to be given to him when he turned 18. "My dearest James," it began, "there are things you need to know about where you came from and how you came to me. Your story begins with love. Your father's love for you even before you were born. It contains darkness, things I'll explain when you're ready, but most of all, it's a story of hope and second chances." I added a few more paragraphs about today's celebration, about how proud I was of the boy he was becoming. Then I sealed it in an envelope to join the others in the fireproof box that held his future. At 70, I knew I might not see James graduate from college or get married. But I had put safeguards in place, a network of loving adults who would be there for him, financial security, and most importantly, the knowledge that he was wanted, that he was loved, that he belonged. I returned to his room and sat in the rocking chair again, watching him sleep. 5 years ago, I had thought my life was ending with Marcus's death. I couldn't have imagined the journey ahead, the pain, the fear, the fight, but also the incredible joy of raising James. "We did it, Marcus," I whispered into the quiet room. "Your son is safe. He's happy. He's growing up strong and good, just like you wanted." Though I knew Marcus couldn't answer, I felt something, a warmth, a peace, as if he were there, proud, grateful, at peace. The suitcase in the lake could have been the end of James's story. Instead, it was just the beginning. A beginning born from tragedy, yes, but one that opened the door to love, to family, to life itself. I don't know what the future holds. I know there will be challenges as James grows and as I age, but I also know that every day with him is a gift. Every smile, every hug, every "I love you, Nana." Love can triumph over the darkest evil. Courage comes in many forms. Sometimes the most broken among us find the greatest strength, and sometimes a second chance at motherhood comes in the most unexpected way, a tiny life pulled from the waters, bringing hope, where once there was only grief. To James, who will read this someday when he's older, you were loved before you were even born. Your father died protecting you. I would have done anything to save you. Every second of these years with you has been worth every sacrifice. You are my reason, my purpose, my miracle, and I wouldn't change a thing.